Or were you calling him, or what's the plan with Brian, please?
He's here. Nicole's
Great.
here as well.
Oh, great. Good. Perfect.
Hi, Brooke.
Good morning. So it looks like we're waiting on, we have Councilmember Murillo. Medina.
She's here. It's Councilmember Marcano. I think is what we're waiting for.
Good morning, Councilmember Marcano. Okay.
Hey, all. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. You have everyone, Brooke?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
I think we're all present as well. So I'll get the meeting started for the Parks Foundations and Quality of Life Policy Committee meeting is now in session. So go to the agenda. Call to order there. Approval of minutes 2A 1/26/23. Any questions, Councilmember Murillo, Councilmember Marcano?
No questions on. I approve the meeting minutes as is.
Okay. I do as well, so minutes are approved. Any announcements?
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
It's not an announcement, but what I'd like to do with the agenda when we get to that is move forward the Brian Green item on the update for park security. He's off-site at a training, and we'd like to work through that item first, if we may.
Yes, I'm fine. Any other opposition, council members?
Works for me.
All right, go ahead. You can do that. Any other announcements? All right, then we'll go to the presentation.
Good morning, council committee members. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for letting me go first, because I would like to get back to that training. We're doing a financial sustainability training, so it's been pretty fun for the last 2 days, and I'd like to get back to it for the last 3 hours of it. So thank you for adjusting our time.
No problem.
All right. So some of Councilmember Medina and Marcano, I think you were on this committee a year ago when we started talking about making some changes to improve our overall safety and security for city parks. And but I know that Councilmember Murillo is new to the committee, and so I'd like to start with a little bit of background that maybe is familiar to a couple of you. So next slide, please. So about a year ago, we, the Aurora Police Department and our PROS GIS specialist, Holly Keuchel, went through and analyzed the crime reported data from Aurora Police Department's records with regards to crime in city parks. Next slide, please. So what we discovered is that there's some crimes reported in parks, and we analyzed the data to come up with to look at which parks had the most crimes reported in them. And so on the left, you'll see bars that represent crimes that occurred at night, during the day, and other things. But the important part is like the park names on the left are the ones that had the highest reported numbers of crimes throughout that previous 12-month history that we looked at from April of 2021 to March of 2022. So City Park had 13 reported crimes, Del Mar 13, Utah 12, Center Hills, Expo, Wheel Park 9, Generals Lowry and Spencer Garrett had 8 reported crimes during those previous 12 months. Next slide, please. We also looked at what types of crimes were occurring and being reported to Aurora Police Department throughout that year. So 26% were aggravated assaults, 11% other assaults, there were some robberies, motor vehicle theft, vandalism, and some weapons violations. Next slide, please. So one of the other things that we could tease out of the data was what time of day were the crimes occurring, and we discovered that 69% of the crimes being reported were during the day, with 30% at night, and we know 1% that was kind of unknown. Next slide, please. We also looked at whether the crimes were occurring in parks that had parking lots and lights, or what combination thereof. 62% of the crimes were reported in parks that had parking lots and lights. 10% were occurring in parks that had parking lot but no lights, and 28% that didn't have a parking lot at all. We were just trying to get a sense of, well, how to focus our efforts and what we wanted to look at as possible solutions. Lighting was being considered, all kinds of things. So we just kind of want to look at that. The next slide, please. After that, we identified with park managers, Brooke and deputy city manager, what we wanted to try to look at as possible solutions. These were what we identified early last year in 2022. Possibly providing private security patrol at night at the parks. We looked at these mobile camera trailers where you could have surveillance cameras and move them around to different parks and get a good idea of what's going on. At the same time, we were also having some issues in the rec centers with some security issues. And so we reached out to Aurora Police Department and see if we could get off-duty officers in the rec centers during their busiest times. We put together, since it was budget preparation time, we also put together a budget request that included 5 FTEs that we would use to increase park ranger patrol in parks throughout the city. And one of the other considerations was possibility of, in the future, looking at nighttime ranger patrol. Next slide, please. So we've moved forward with many of those solutions, and this is where I want to bring you up to date on what we have done so far, how we are progressing in the process. The first thing we began to do was look at, because AMC was contracting for their replacement of their guard service. So we tagged onto that RFP, and we worked to get the private security patrol at night stood up as soon as we possibly could. We also began looking into those mobile camera trailers and worked with IT to identify ones that we could purchase that would be compatible with the IT system, so that we would all be able to view those cameras on the city system. We also had some difficulty in getting Aurora Police Department off-duty officers. There's just not that many of them that were accepting the shifts in the rec centers. So we tagged also on the private security at the rec centers. And then of course, going through the budget process, that our budget request for the daytime park ranger patrol with the 5 FTEs was approved. So thank you very much for that. And we're working forward on that solution as well. Next slide, please. So this is kind of what the overnight security patrol looks like. We have the contractors, Denver Metro Protective Services, same company that does the AMC security. And so we were able to launch that as the overnight security patrol on October 14th, 2022. So that was the first solution we were able to implement. We hired them to provide 2 security vehicles like this with 1 guard in each vehicle. And we have them patrolling the high crime parks throughout the city every night, 7 days a week. So they come on to patrol at 9 p.m., which is just about 2 hours before the parks close. And they're able to then inform people that are in the parks at that time that, the parks do close at 11, just provide them that information. And then they patrol through the night until 5 a.m. So their scope of services to observe activity, report any criminal activity to Aurora Police Department. We've worked with the police department to connect them directly with radios that we provide. Those security officers are directly connected to the police dispatch, so they can communicate directly with Aurora Police Department. These officers, these guards also provide nightly reports. So as they're patrolling around, they're providing reports. We provided them with a list of 34 parks to patrol each night. We have one car that is patrolling north of Mississippi throughout parks in northern portions of Aurora, and the other car is patrolling parks in the southern, south of Mississippi, all the way down to southeast Aurora. So all the parks, and we were able to change that as we see a need. So if we have reports from council members or citizens or park supervisors that something's going on, we can adjust that and we switch out parks. But that number is just basically gives them the opportunity, about 16 parks per patrol vehicle. That gives them a pretty good route to patrol through the city. And if they have the opportunity, they're going to other parks as well. They're not ignoring every other park, but they're not hitting every park every night. But they're hitting everyone on our list every night, and some of them twice. And then we're able, like I said, we're able to adjust that and change what we're asking them to do on a weekly basis. So next slide, please. The second half of that private security arm is that we were able to tack on the rec center security patrol, and Joe Sack handled that recruitment or that RFP portion. But we were able to launch that in January of this year with the opening of Southeast Rec Center. That's also a service that's being provided at Moorhead Rec Center, Central Rec Center, and in the summertime when the Del Mar pool opens, we'll be using that service there as well. This is focused on the busiest times of the rec centers, and these are professional armed security guards that are there and able to interact with visitors and address safety concerns, immediately. And they're in direct contact with the facility managers there. Next slide, please. So the Daytime Ranger Park Patrol is one we're working hard to get stood up right now. We began recruiting in December when we knew the budget was approved and we could move forward with those recruitments. We have identified 4 park ranger candidates that are starting and beginning their training with us, and we have interviews for the supervisor position on Monday and Thursday of next week. We've figured out some patrol vehicles that we can put into place as we wait for the ones that are approved in the budget to be purchased. Those will take some time. The lead time on the vehicles is about a year. So, but we've found an interim solution. We've used some other vehicles that we're going to assign to that duty so that we can stand up that patrol as soon as we can. So these 2 patrol vehicles will be, so we will have park rangers in city parks 7 days a week. So these vehicles and rangers will provide for park patrol 7 days a week. And these rangers will interact with all visitors. They will focus on education and enforcement of rules, the whole suite of park rules. So they'll be able to deal with dogs off leash, ATVs that are on a trail or in a park or something like that. So a lot of the complaints that we get from citizens, sometimes via council as well. So that should be, we're trying to get that operational as soon as possible. We think as soon as we get that supervisor hired, that'll give us the capacity to split these folks out and get them patrolling 7 days a week really soon here. So next slide, please. The mobile security cameras have been, another thing with a long wait time. We used salary savings in 2022 to issue a PO in September for the 2 mobile camera trailers. Each of these trailers has 3 cameras that look, in different directions. They have lights, they have a speaker. So, we're not quite sure about. We haven't been trained on the software or anything yet. So, but when we get those, we expect them to show up in April. We will begin deploying those in problem areas, and they'll give us actual real-time data. We'll actually be able to see video of what's going on. Sometimes we get reports that, there's people in the park all night long, or this will give us the ability to kind of focus our efforts and we'll be able to identify what's actually going on and then figure out what the best solution might be. And that delivery is expected around April, so we should see those in the summer being deployed. It would give us extra sets of eyes and ears out there. Next slide, please. Just a summary of some of the costs that we're investing in this effort. The 2 mobile camera trailers, the total for that is about $92,000, and that is a purchase. We will own these trailers. We'll be able to move them around anywhere we want. The private security patrol overnight at the parks is about $183,000 per year, and we expect the private security at the rec centers to cost about $160,000 per year. The budget that was approved for the 2023 daytime park ranger patrol includes the 2 vehicles, so that's a higher total of $455,000 that will be invested in 2023. And then annually after that, it'll be a bit less. It'll be about $325,000 a year for those 5 FTEs and their continued salary and equipment. So yeah, and that last bullet point says we're currently in the recruiting phase. I don't quite have those all up and running yet, but we are working very diligently to get that up and running. So with that, I would, ask if you had any questions, or if you'd like me to go back. I kind of went a little fast. I'm sorry, but it's familiar data to me. So,
Councilmember Murillo? Anyone have questions?
I did. I kind of missed the first slide. I should have interrupted you then. But just on the park statistic,
yes.
Looks like she got froze.
Lauren, could you go back, please?
She's having some bandwidth issues.
Yeah, I was gonna say she got froze.
I was hoping it wasn't me. I was like, uh-oh, I've lost everybody.
It was her. Well, we can wait and see. Councilmember Marcano, do you got any questions?
I do.
ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Medina. So first, I want to go to the armed private security. I'm curious if these folks are post-certified, or like what the distinction is between them and I guess the unarmed security that we utilize in other places.
These folks are private security guards, so they are licensed as private security guards. They are armed, but they are not post-certified. Some of them may be, if that was their career path before
Sure.
they joined the private security firm. But what they have is a training program that they go through to allow them to be armed security guards and licensed as such.
Okay. I guess as a follow-up, I was not aware that you could have armed private security guards. I thought that that's something that state statute, kind of relegated to basically law enforcement. So, I guess what are the rules in terms of like governing use of force for, private security companies?
I'm not an expert on that, Councilmember Marcano. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I'm not either. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I would defer to the city attorney.
Okay. Do we have someone on the call who could maybe add some clarity?
Councilmember Marcano, this is Tim Joyce, and I'm not familiar enough with state law about security guards to answer your question
All
at
right.
this time.
Thank you, Tim. So I guess part of the reason I'm asking these questions for the armed private security is if this is something that we're able to utilize at our rec centers and at our parks, I would imagine there's other places where we could, benefit from this as well. And I'm just wondering, and maybe this is better suited for a different committee, if we had ever considered bringing a service like this in-house. So, I would imagine after a certain point, contracting is going to be more expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I agree. I think that's for someone else to answer.
Maybe that's probably better suited for the public safety.
Yeah.
I guess.
I guess just anecdotally, I just know you see armed security guards in like the mall or other places like that where
Yeah, I see them carrying like
protecting property.
tasers. you know, like tasers and like maybe a billy club or a flashlight or something like that. But I don't think I've ever seen folks carrying like, you know, pistols,
Firearms.
basically. Yeah. So maybe I was just not looking hard enough. But
Brooke?
I was surprised to see that. Is all. Oh, sure. Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, I believe, and if Laura's on the line, she might be able to confirm this. I believe we have armed security at the libraries. I'm not quite sure about the municipal center, but I would imagine we do there as well. So I do, you know, it could, yeah, it would be a conversation for the Public Safety Committee.
Councilmember Marcano, we can follow up with some factual information around our contracts for security, who's armed, who's unarmed. I do know that the private security companies do work very closely with APD on, you know, protocols and how to respond in situations. And so we can certainly follow up on your questions regarding that as well.
All right. Thank you, Laura. And just to share with the group, looks like Councilor Murillo is getting an error trying to rejoin. Something about the meeting is having a problem processing your request. So I'm not sure what's going on there. So my second question was around the mobile security camera system. I am a little concerned about vandalism for these and just generally how effective they might be to deter folks. I get that we also want to be able to see what's going on in the park, so I do value that use, but I guess can someone speak to the, like, how sturdy are these things?
Well, that's part of one of the reasons this takes the lead time is so long, is they're built very well built.
Okay.
I mean, vandalism is always a concern, and we're definitely concerned about that. But everything is secured in locked containers on the trailer, and the mast is tall enough that, you know, it would be difficult to vandalize it, but not impossible, of course. You see these deployed at construction sites all across the city, and like Kroger has a large contract for these types of trailers. You see one right at Mississippi, the King Soopers there at Mississippi behind the Taco Bell. I think they jointly have a contract to monitor that parking lot with those businesses. And I've been kind of keeping an eye on that one and some others. Just, you know, once you kind of get into this idea, you start seeing them in more places. And so I've kind of kept an eye on a few of them, and I haven't seen any get vandalized, but I'm sure it's possible. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So these are more akin to the ones than that APD is currently using. I've seen those deployed throughout the city, and they look a lot sturdier. The image that you showed here, you know, it's like a little solar panel that's exposed, and I'm just like,
The solar panel would be the most vulnerable part of it, but the ones that APD is using currently as a test model from a different company are pretty similar. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I got for y'all for now. I think Councilmember Murillo.
Councilmember Murillo, do you got questions? Are you back?
Lauren,
I am back.
All right, go ahead.
Apologies, I don't know what happened. Technology. I was just gonna ask to revisit the first slide on the parks, and it
is
was
this the correct slide?
let me see. Yeah.
Okay.
Day crimes. Okay. I just didn't have I wasn't clear before we switched kind of the difference between the two metrics, but I think you went over day and night crime. So I just wanted to clarify to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Have you?
Yeah, this slide is a little busy, so I kind of tried to talk about just, I mean, really the point is on the right is a map that's kind of a heat map that shows where that's happening. And the left slide is a bar chart of just, I think it's got too much information on it for a small slide on this.
No, it's okay. It makes sense. I was just
Okay.
wanting to clarify. I was just gonna just add that looks like a lot of those are kind of in the, you know, at least in concentration, the northwest part, between 1 and 3, wards 1 and 3. So yeah, sorry, was just making that note. Thanks for letting me clarify.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
got it.
Claudia.
I've
Oh,
got-
sorry,
I've got
Medina.
you. Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. With regards to the aggravated assaults, because that seems to be the largest category, if I recall correctly. Do we know if this is like interpersonal violence between people who already know each other and they just basically get into their fights at the park, or do you not have that level of granularity?
We don't have that level of detail. You know, this was based on crime statistics. So it's if you go onto the APD website, you can go to their crime reported map, and then the analysis was done on that background data. So
Yeah.
it doesn't get into, you know, the details of what happened. It's just how it was reported by the, or, you know, how it was reported back to dispatch by the police officer that was called there.
Okay.
I do think, you know, some of those, yeah, you can get really down in the weeds and look at the report, but we didn't analyze each of those to determine.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. I know that at Utah Park, I've had my constituents complain pretty much especially during the summer, but every year I've been on a council about large groups of young adults or even youth getting together there. Then that usually escalates into some kind of fight at some point. So
I do think that's a lot of what we're seeing here. You know, since a lot of it was during the day, I do think it was a lot of, you know, yeah, fights.
yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right, I've got a few questions. Just having been on these, do we currently still have cameras on the outside of most of our rec centers and in the parking lots?
As far as I know, yes, we absolutely do.
Okay, just curious on that. The other issue is, do you think that staff feel safer having these people around?
Well, is Joe on the call? He's in the same training I'm in, so I'm not sure if he's on the call this morning, but he would be the best to speak to the staff at the rec centers. And Brooke has her hand up. Maybe she can help you.
I can speak to that. I believe they do. And that was one of their requests. They did want security in the building with them. And now that we have that, we couldn't get it to them soon enough. So yes, I think they feel much better with the security. And they appreciated the off-duty officers as well. The issue with the off-duty officers is that there were officers taking some of these the spaces for overtime, but they also had a lot of other commitments, and there just weren't enough officers to fill the spaces due to other commitments.
You know, if our opening and closing procedures for staff coming in, are those being like two people at a time to open and close and making sure that each other gets to their vehicles or to the center safely?
I'll have to follow back up with staff about the vehicles and getting to vehicles safely. That is something I've asked them to do. We, as a policy, as my policy, and what I've explained to all groups is that I always want at least two people in a building. I would never want a single person in a building.
We follow that similar protocol with our nature centers as well, Councilmember Medina.
Yeah, I'm just, like I said, I mean, it's power in numbers, right? I mean, it just makes it, not saying that people couldn't still, but I just think it makes it a little bit tougher sometimes when people know that there's more than one individual coming out. And I used to do that at the centers myself, is make sure that I was either, if I was opening or closing, to make sure that, you know, people got safely to their vehicles and left before I left, just to make sure that, you know, people are getting to and from safely from their place. Yeah, I mean, have you also thought of any other like unarmed groups that do you know, security? Because I know of a couple that do security that also work with a lot of those populations who are doing a lot of those infractions, who actually have been around a lot of the gang members and things of that nature, who kind of can have a better idea on the ground of people and have a good way of integrating and talking to people ahead of time, so that maybe it helps to mitigate some of these interactions.
I'm unfamiliar with that, Councilmember Medina, so we'd appreciate suggestion.
No, I'm just curious. Like I said, I've known of a couple groups that I've worked with in the past at other events, and they're pretty good in the sense because they have all come from those parts of the community. They're communities of color as well, and so they have a very good knack. They're unarmed, but they have a very good knack of how to integrate and spot things and see things that maybe others aren't kind of aware of, just because of the background that they have and the understanding they have in these communities. So I was just curious.
Councilmember Medina.
Yes, Councilmember Murillo.
I actually just wanted to echo that sentiment. Shortly after the pandemic, when we were kind of starting to be able to be in person and more so outdoors, I had organized a series of like walks alongside in partnership with a resident group in Denver and residents in Aurora. But we basically did just a walk, a simple walk with community members that lived in kind of the high in some high crime routes, and the PAR officers helped kind of map out a route of some kind of hotspots, and some of the parks kind of included. But we partnered with AP to have a police officer. But in addition, that was kind of like an added benefit. We had initially organized it with just residents and a similar kind of like safety, non-armed like citizen group that wanted to support as well. So it was like a very therapeutic exercise to be able to like get folks I don't know, reacclimated and reconnected with, our public open space, public park space, and kind of that like medium between, just having a big group of people, a mass of people, just doing something simple as walking and talking about different issues, and having positive, proactive engagement with our police officers, and certainly the citizen group that I like your idea here. Offered a lot of just reassurance as well. So just wanted to echo off of that comment you made.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to do that actually in my ward as well, and just trying to get, I think, again, there's power in numbers, right? If we get community members to come out and not always feel like they have to be inside because of issues, again, there's power in numbers. Not saying that things couldn't happen, but I think that most crime people are trying to do it without being seen, right? I mean, they don't want to be seen or identified. So if there's numbers and people walking in groups, and to your point, having conversations about a variety of things in the community, then that helps to add a sense of security in those communities. And I'm going to start that in my ward here at the next meeting. So yeah, I mean, I think, it's a combination of a lot of things together, us coming together as a community, certainly utilizing all the resources we can city-wise, but tackling it from a variety of angles so that we're working collectively and not working in silos. So, but thank you again for the presentation. We appreciate it. Brooke?
Yes, thank you very much, Councilmember Medina. We have a standing meeting. Our leadership with pros has a standing meeting with with the police department and several of the power officers. So I just had one earlier this week, but I'll circle back and mention these ideas and talk to them about what their capacity is to stand up some of these things in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Or
Appreciate it.
at least put it on the radar.
And Chair Medina, if I may, too,
Yeah, sure.
Brooke and Joe and the rec team work very closely with the Youth Violence Prevention Program as well, in terms of offering program at the rec centers, which may go with some of the strategies you're suggesting. So we'll also bring this conversation back to that group as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other questions from council members? All right. Thank you much. And we'll go on.
Thank you all very much.
Item is Center Hills Park Public Engagement History.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Ankeny, and I am the manager of the PRO's Planning Parks Design and Construction team. So thank you for your time this morning. At the last month's meeting, there was a request to have a reminder of what all transpired for the Center Hills Park public engagement. And just a quick look at the history of that. Next slide, please. So this is a chronology of the events that transpired back in 2013. In May of that year, City Council authorized the closing of the golf course and the exploration for repurposing of the park. So through that process, we established a couple of public meetings to get feedback from the general public. And then after the summertime, we presented that information back to this committee's policy committee in October. And then in November, it went on to the City Council study session and then on for final approval with the Parks Master Plan for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Next slide, please. When my staff was reaching out to the general public, we wanted to make sure that we identified the goals that we were trying to achieve. So we reminded everyone that we were repurposing the golf course, but we wanted to ensure we were creating a safe place for people of all ages and also create a space that meets both the needs of the people and the environment. If you're familiar with the site, you're probably aware that it is the confluence of the Highline Canal and the East Tollgate Creek. So there are some environmental sensitivities around the area. And the four major considerations that we wanted to remind the public at that time were water and the sensitivity of, Aurora water and our bringing water into the park, but also with regards to the environment and the natural water that occurs at the site, as well as any costs that occur for any remodeling or renovations. Maintenance is also a big concern, and then as well as the community needs. There was the major opportunity for the area was recognized that there are opportunities for additional connections with the Highline Canal Trail, as well as the Signature Park to the east. One thing I wanted to mention with regards to the public outreach, staff did do a very thorough job in reaching out to the community. Over 200 flyers were mailed to single-family homes in the area. There were almost 40 flyers that were mailed specifically to HOA and neighborhood associations within a half-mile of the site. And then 4 of the major apartment complexes in the area, the Silverbrook, the Highline Village, Westridge, and Greensview apartment complexes were also contacted directly by staff, and they were provided informational flyers as well to try to encourage their residents to attend the meetings. From the business community, Raytheon, the Community College of Aurora, and Buckley Air Force Base were also informed of the meetings, and they did all 3 provide representatives during those public outreach meetings. And then, of course, we did our standard meetings of having flyers at the golf course, also our social media postings and notifications to the mayor, city council, and city management staff. Next slide. So these were a series of the major ideas that came back from that public outreach. As you can see, many people requested everything from dog parks to the disc golf course, sand volleyball. Soccer fields were also another request that we saw, as well as a playground, shelter and shade, which is very routinely comes up in public engagement meetings, was also requested, as well as for the trail connections. A couple folks had requested teen center. Of course, that has significant cost implications, as well as a golf course maintenance and management training facility. That was probably one of the more unique recommendations coming from the public, and a longboarding and skateboarding amenities. Next slide. This is the final master plan that did go to City Council and then on to the Parks Recreation Advisory Board and was approved at the end of 2013. So you can see here that there are some proposed shade structures as well as the dog park areas. And then it outlines the proposed disc golf area, which has currently been installed. And this really concludes the presentation. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer that. Of course, this work was done 10 years ago. So, but I did include in the packet all of the information that went to previous advisory board and city council at that time. But if you do have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Committee members, do you have any questions?
At this time.
No questions for me either.
I just have a couple. So I know we have the disc golf there, correct?
Yes.
And the dog park.
The
And
dog
do
park,
we have statistics on how many people are utilizing that?
so the dog park has not been constructed at this time.
Okay.
Only the disc golf, and we do not have any current disc golf statistics because there's no point of sale, or it's really a first come, first serve. We don't have any way of tracking the number of people that come and use the park for that purpose. We have anecdotal information from staff, and also there are a lot of popular websites through the disc golf community. So there's a little bit of research there, but it doesn't really give perfect statistics on general attendance. It's a lot of the disc golf community, they're talking about quality of the course and making recommendations for fellow disc golf users.
Yeah, the other question I have is there fencing on the side where Raytheon and the community college are at that separate those two areas?
I am pulling up a map now to see if I can.
Nicole, Councilmember
Yes.
Medina, I've been on the site recently and I can speak to that.
Okay.
So there is a very lengthy, very tall fence that runs the length of the disc golf course. And it's that white line that you see on this map that's on the north side of the lengthy piece of property that's highlighted in that light green. And
Gotcha.
you see it end, if you're looking at the right-hand side of the map, you see it kind of end at the parking lot. It does end. Since this
Right.
map was drawn, there's a lot of businesses, so there isn't a closure. The trail that runs between the fence and Raytheon's, there's a lot of bushes in the parking lot. There's a trail that runs through there. It goes all the way out to airport. But you don't see the fence close in the end of the property between Raytheon and airport. And we've looked at that, and I'm not sure there's a good way to make that closure when we went out there and looked at that, because that was one thing we looked at. And then, you know, the fence, it starts around the parking lot. And so there is not a fence that I noticed on Pro's side along the parking lot. There's a lot of bushes. I'd have to go revisit that fence. I'd have to go revisit that area to recall the fence. But those are the fences that I recall.
Thank you.
And Brooke, if I may, looking at the aerial photos, it looks like some of that fencing was likely installed back when it was a standard golf course rather than a disc golf course, of course, for protection of the parking lot from preventing the golf balls from going in. So a lot of that fencing, I believe, was in place when it was transitioned to a disc golf course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Down to miscellaneous matters for consideration.
Councilor Medina?
Yes, Councilmember Marcano, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I had a constituent reach in about memorial trees and utilizing human composting. His spouse sadly recently passed away, and her wish was to have a memorial tree planted at Counterbury Park. With her basically remains being used to compost to help grow the tree. And the inquiry I received is if we have any existing policy around human composting. Is that something we're able to do?
Brooke, did you have your hand up?
Councilmember Murillo, I'm sorry, Marcano. Yes, I'm familiar with this request. I was made aware of it yesterday, and I have reached out to that constituent and extended my condolences and approved his request. We've looked at the park rules, and there is nothing that prohibits it. So we're going to go ahead and approve. I did approve that request.
Great,
As
thank you
far
so
as
much.
having an ongoing policy in the future, we'll have to revisit that. But right now, I don't see anything that would preclude him for doing that.
Great, thank you so much, Brooke. I appreciate that.
Any other matters for consideration? All right, seeing none, I guess we'll go to topics for next month's meeting.
Thank
Committee
you, Chair
Go ahead.
Medina. So our plan is to bring back to bring an update on the PROS master plan and the dog park study that Sasaki is doing, the consultant, as part of that master planning effort. So we'll bring back an update on those two efforts. That's what I have right now, and if I think there's potential for a naming of a park that will come forward as well. We just have to resolve that internally right now. And that's all I have.
Right. Any other questions from committee members? Not? All right, then we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you all. Have a great
Thank you
day.
all.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.